The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado. And with me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Hey.
We are talking to folks who are new to this.
Ooh, neat.
Last time, we talked about jumping into Enneagram for the first time. You have found your type. You may be like listening to a podcast here or there. You might have a book or something, but you're new to this and just want some wisdom. Like, what's this all about? Somebody told me I was this number. Give it to me fresh. And that's what we're here to do.
Giving it to him fresh.
That's right. That came out sideways when I said it. I'm glad that you pointed it out. Last time we talked about using the Enneagram. This time we talked about how the Enneagram's a map. And the very first thing you need to do is grab hold of it like it's a map and find yourself on the map and find the big arrow that says you are here. Yep. Once you're there, then we can do some real work. And today, real work starts. You know what you do with a map, TJ?
You set it aside and never look at it again.
That's right. You roll it up and put a big fat rubber band on it.
Yeah, we'll get it if we ever need to look at it, right? If we ever get lost,
they got apps for that now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When was the last time that you actually used a map?
Like a paper map?
Yeah, like an actual paper map.
I have a child. I have a 4-year-old who is interested in things like paper maps, so we use them all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, but that's mainly because she has not been granted access to the devices, which smart. She would much prefer to use to look at maps as soon as it becomes available.
The thing that happens when you got the map in hand, and obviously it can be on your device, is one of the actually really helpful things when it's on the device is you can see the little circle moving, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, good. I'm getting closer to my destination.
Yeah.
How do you know, since Enneagram's a map, how do you know if you're moving? How do you know if you're progressing? How do you know if you're not just going helter-skelter on this sucker? That's where we're going today.
Excellent question.
Right? I don't know that anybody's asked that question ever in Enneagram literature, and you and I, my friend.
Here we go.
We're here to do it.
Trendsetters.
TJ and I have 11 ways for you to know if you're actually moving forward.
I want to make a Jeff Foxworthy joke right here, but
okay.
I don't have enough time to come up with a good one. So insert Jeff Foxworthy joke here.
Does the you know you're a redneck if?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know you're progressing if? If you have a mug with your Enneagram number on it with some pithy saying, you are progressing.
I'm not sure that's one of the signs. Is that, did you add one to the list? I don't think that's one of them.
Nope. I'm clearly an Enneagram expert. No,
there you go.
Like sometimes actually what it means is that somebody who buys that sort of stuff is in your life and wants to show you that they love you. That's actually how that worked for me.
Yep. They saw it at the at some store and thought, "Oh yeah, this will be perfect."
Hey, these are 80% off. I wonder why. No, the way that you know you're progressing. I love this list. It's again one of those things I've just been kind of working through. How do you know if this is working? And so I tried to get into much more. This is actually not just Enneagram exclusive. This is kind of like therapy 101 kind of stuff. And that's the thing about Enneagram. Enneagram is an introspective tool, as we talked about last time. And if you're doing inner work, here are some of the ways that you know that it's moving. And by the way, for those of you who are skeptical, as we go through this list, you will notice two things. One, that this is how healthy people who are getting healthier inside, these are some of the signs. And two, the Enneagram is extraordinary at producing these results.
Yeah.
be skeptical all you want on the Enneagram. In terms of its efficacy, there are very few things, as we said last time, that do anything close to what the Enneagram does in these fronts. And so we'll share with you, what does it look like for you to get healthier? How do you know that you're moving? That's what I got. You got anything before we move on?
We talked a little bit in the last time about, it's a map, and I brought up the metaphor of the mall map, right? And like there's no reason to go look at the map for the sake of looking at the map. You're looking at the map to go somewhere, right? You want to find a store at the mall. You want to you want to know how to get to the food court. You want to know how to get out of the food court. Like there's lots of reasons to look at a map, but looking at the map is not one of the reasons that you look at the map.
Yeah.
So there's we should be seeing movement, and these are lots. Here's 11 ways that you should see. Oh wait, I'm nowhere near the food court anymore. It worked, right?
Some of those food courts can be enormous.
I know.
You kind of do need a map to get.
Yeah, seriously. And the restaurant I want isn't even in the food court.
TJ and I live in near Denver, Colorado, and there is a fantastic Mexican restaurant that is world famous called the Casa Bonita. And you actually do need a map to get out of that sucker.
Right. Seriously. That place is nuts. It looks like a normal store on the inside. And it looks like a crazy store, but not like a magic tent from Harry Potter where you walk inside and you're like, how is this place this big?
Looks like you. I want to make all sorts of jokes right now. It looked like a 7 had way too much money when starting out their Mexican food dream restaurant. Fine folks who created South Park just bought it, and it's a worldwide attraction now.
Yep.
Anyway, TJ, number one, how you know that you're progressing when you're using the Enneagram is, and this may seem just obvious, but you will have greater self-awareness. Noticing that there are patterns in your life, noticing that you have emotions, noticing that you think about certain things in a certain way. And perhaps above all, recognizing that you have real triggers and being able to name them, especially when you're kind of on autopilot. These are some of the things that Enneagram does very well in terms of naming these for your type and just saying, have you noticed that this is going on within you?
Yeah. And not just the things that you like either. It's like, I love listening to descriptions of like horoscope types that are written by somebody who's not doing a very good job, or like year of the rat, year of the dog, like the Chinese New Year. Like so many of them use words interchangeably. And when you hear someone describe like the year of the rat, these people are vivacious and this, and then you hear someone describe the year of the dog, and it's like they just rearranged the order of the words, and it's all exactly the same thing. There's not really much value there to being told things that you want to believe about yourself. But as you go through Enneagram work, as you really listen to people describe the traits, people describe their own experiences, you should be able to see yourself more clearly.
Paired with that is not only being able to see yourself clearly, but because you can name it as your type, it gives you permission to not be harsh and self-critical. It allows you to say, here are some of my natural attributes, the hand I've been dealt. And you don't need to curse your hand. You need to understand your hand and how to play your hand. And that is just a huge gift. Second, I have emotional regulation and resilience. There is something about using the Enneagram where when you understand your type and you have self-awareness, you feel more in control of your emotional responses and can recover from setbacks because of this knowledge. Like, this will be how you know that the tool is actually in your head and is beginning to affect your responses. Is that your emotions begin to have a little bit more regulation. This is what, moderation and wisdom end up requiring, in getting us from here to there, is just basic insight into this is how I am in the world. And because I know that, I can regulate how I am in the world.
Yeah, it's not an out of body experience, but there is, like, with greater self-awareness, you start to see your behavior a little bit more from the outside. Like, the more and more you spend on your inner life, the more you can see your outer life more clearly.
Yeah. It's a great way to put it.
And I also think that it gives us a better opportunity to discover, like, the thing underneath the thing. Like, this has been something that I've been doing since, like, early childhood therapy, like dealing with the stuff that it was going on with me, is that, like, my anger is almost always, every single time, pointing at something. It's not, anger is the response that happens, but what's actually going on inside is a feeling of sadness or of loss, or of, like, somebody took something away from me that I don't have control of that thing anymore. Like, my anger is almost always pointing at a different emotion.
Yeah.
And if I don't know that, then I'm never going to get in control of my anger. Right? And so part of the emotional regulation, part of just doing some of the basic things about 9ness in Enneagram, self-awareness, better self-understanding, leads to me understanding a little bit more that the anger is actually about some other kind of feeling. And I can deal with that, whereas I don't have any idea what to do with the anger.
It's an excellent way to think about regulation of all things. Both, so TJ is a 9, I'm a 1. We're both body types. For you who are new, body types, 8s, 9s, and 1s, their underlying feeling is anger, but it's expressed differently. My anger is very self-directed. So a lot of my anger as a 1 ends up being aimed at how badly I've messed something up, or that I'm probably at fault. And that is an interpretation of all the things. It's producing an emotion in me. If I simply know as a 1, my anger is self-directed and intense, then when I start to get angry at myself, I can at least pause and say, this is that moment where my anger goes inwards and really flares up at myself. And it's always over the top when it does. And that will give me a tool for navigating strong surges of emotions to the world that's out there.
Right.
Boom. Thirdly, it reduces our reactivity in relationships. One of the phenomenal things that the Enneagram does is it provides us empathy. Once you realize you have a set of glasses that affect your emotions, for example, us in anger, we can all of a sudden do a second move, which is other people also have glasses and also have surges of underlying feelings that are probably very different from ours. And you become more thoughtful before reacting to others. This is how you know that you are progressing. This is how you know that the tool is actually doing its work, when that empathy begins to take over, both for yourself first and for others next.
Yeah, this is one of the great beauties about the Enneagram, is that not only are you wearing a set of glasses, but everyone else is wearing a set of glasses too, and 8 of them are different from yours. And the more and more time you spend on your own introspection, the more you can realize that, oh, not everybody thinks this way.
Right.
And the person across the table from me is probably coming at this from a very different angle than what I'm experiencing. and then interpreting through my own lens.
Yep. So like ninja level on this front is before reacting to things that normally would have triggered you. You actually have the composure to pivot in a different direction. If you are able to really get a handle on understanding these are your normal defense mechanisms for situations like this, and that commonly those don't go the way that you want them to, and that you choose more mindful actions, that's when the tool's doing its work.
Yep.
That's when like you have done the work of self-understanding your type and how the ruts that your type naturally wants to pivot into and get stuck in. If you were able to mindfully posture away from those things, that's winning. For some of us, that means, like for me, it means actually not acting. It often means taking a big step back and pausing. For types like TJ's, it probably means getting out of places of pausing and really engaging.
Yep.
And so it's really going to be type specific on these fronts. And you have to know your type. You need to know the ruts. You need to know the hazards that it avoids. And where's the wisdom here for what it looks like to be a healthy person given your type?
Yeah. Hopefully we'll say this over and over again, and it should be said over and over again. There's no magic bullet. There is no Dr. McGillicuddy's miracle cure. Like that's not a thing here. This is long-term work, and it may be the case that in 9 out of 10 situations where you would react inappropriately, you still do react inappropriately, but in that one, you're able to go, wait a second, and choose a different path. Even that one is a good sign that some of the work is being done.
Yeah, there you go. Pat yourself on the back.
Yep.
So here's one of the things when looking to like quote unquote improve. A lot of times we're trying to improve the things out there. You're building a house and you can see the improvement taking place. You, as we kind of mentioned before, like you're dieting, you can take pictures that are like kind of before and after, and you can see the quote unquote, the improvement that has taken place. Inner work isn't like that.
Right.
There's no physical sign that it's, that it's actually moving you. But what TJ said is the sign. Like that is the self-assessment. That is the before and after photograph. And just getting your mind and heart around that really matters.
Yeah. And sometimes it's actually going to have to tear some things apart. Like it's going to have to make it a little worse before it gets better. My partner and I did the Whole30 diet a few years ago, and looking at the before and after pictures, and I've never thought of myself as skinny, and I looked at those photos and she's like, there's no meat anymore. Like what happened to the body that I used to have? And for me, Whole30 is to help you understand what foods are impacting you. Long story short, that event made me look worse to give me some information. It may be the case that as you're doing some of this work, the thing that you see in the like now versus the before photo looks different, not better. That's not a bad thing. You may have to be going into the dark before you can come back into the light.
Yeah. And good news, and this isn't on our list, but let me pitch what the light is real quick. Maps aim at a target. So in a lot of our other work, we cover this. But if you want to just jump to the punchline, look up holy ideas and look up the virtues for your type, the virtue of 3s, the holy idea for 7s. Just look up those two things. That should be in TJ and I's material. When we talk about the high side of our number, it's in those episodes or in our books. But just Google those things, and that's the target for your number. Yeah. And your best self is going to be in those spaces.
Yeah.
So for me as a 1, serenity is a virtue, and holy order is the idea for 1s. That is that there are forces outside of myself that are taking care of reality. It's not all my job to fix everything. Those two ideas are incredibly powerful for ones like myself. All the types have these, well worth looking up. And we'll cover those elsewhere. So, but not here, unfortunately. Yeah. 4. How do you know that you're moving? This one's hard. You have an openness to discomfort and vulnerability. One of the things Enneagram invites, and people who really get into the Enneagram, it's almost like an unspoken thing that you get used to actually saying, here's who I am in my type, in ways that are fairly exposing. And just getting comfortable facing parts of yourself that used to feel unsettling or shameful, rather than avoiding the discomfort there, that is a sign of meaningful growth.
Yep.
It may look like self-condemnation, and as you heard us earlier, you should avoid self-condemnation. But being able to talk about your inner life in a way that is vulnerable and honest, that is a sign that the Enneagram is doing its work.
Yeah. It's I feel like there's been several points that have been made so far in this whole session that like are making the point that discomfort is coming.
Right.
You know,
that's true.
Like if you have to go into the dark to get into the light, then like the dark is uncomfortable. That's what we're talking about. And there's so much about ourselves. Like everyone I've ever met has traits, has ways that they behave that they are unaware of and aren't great.
Right.
And maybe it's the case that you're not great is actually still pretty good, but you could make it better. And that's what growth is. It is learning the things that we are unaware of about ourselves. And in order to get there, we're going to have to get a little uncomfortable.
Spot on. Number 5, and I truly hope that this is true. And everybody's life situation is different, but it really should be the case that Enneagram will improve your relationships, specifically around communication. What I've experienced, and my deep hope is that comes across, especially when somebody who you are in relationship with knows their Enneagram type as well, is that you will be able to listen better, express yourself more clearly, and handle the conflicts with a different measure of self-understanding. Conflict will always be part of our lives. Difficulties will always be part of our lives. It is how we play the hand that really matters. And oftentimes in terms of interpersonal, conflict, when I'm able to understand the other person's perspective, especially because they are different from me and have a different filter, different glasses, different underlying feelings, different orientation of time. Once we can begin to understand all that, then we can extend compassion and understand where they're coming from and navigate. And again, it's just another invitation to moderation and wisdom.
And I hope that nobody is hearing that this work can fix your relationships. It can certainly help, but you and the other person are the ones that are fixing the relationships, not the Enneagram.
Yeah, it's just a tool.
The tool can give you better introspection, better introspection, like give you an ability to see the other's heart a little bit more, to understand their behavior, to give them more space and grace to be themselves. And like they have their own lens, you have your own lens, and like there's problems on all sides, and all of that stuff is true. Enneagram language can, especially if the other person is invested in the language as well, Enneagram language can really help. This has been one of the greatest things that my wife and I have to help us navigate our relationship, especially when there's problems. It just gives us space to talk about things that we might have been shooting past each other before.
I'll give you an illustration on exactly this front. Maybe it's not when things are breaking. It's actually when things are average. What I've started to realize, and this happened just yesterday, so all 3 of my relationships in my house are from the different triads. So there's a heart, head, and gut. And all 3 of the other people in my house and relationship, my 2 kids and my wife, each represent one of those.
Yeah.
The heart type wants attention. Now, my wife comes in the door, and there's all sorts of things being spoken about. But there is a point where she pivots and says, now is the time I'm inviting you to give me attention. And I need to know that that's the time I need my energy to surge up a little bit.
Yeah.
And need to feed her and, the thing, really react to the thing that she needs in that moment.
Yep.
So this happened at a point like yesterday where like all the problems had gotten addressed. And then she went there and it was like, oh, I need to move into that space now. And I can't just pull back. My youngest is a 5, head triad. The thing that they want most are the signs of care are you caring about my resources? Do I have what I need? And again, all sorts of things we talk about. We're talking about comic book movies, and we're talking about football games, and we're talking about, how to get from here to there. But then they say, I need this piece of clothing. And if I don't realize that that's the thing that matters most to them, then I'm missing out. But since I do know the Enneagram, I know that that's what's on the radar. My energy can go up. Alongside my oldest is an 8 body triad. They want control. We are talking about board games. We are talking about what we're eating for dinner. When they insist on space for themselves, that they would like to have a little bit more room in the kitchen to themselves for a minute, I need to know that this is the thing that matters. But those 3 plays are just, I mean, I'm pouring, gold into those relationships just by acknowledging here's the things that matter. That's a long illustration, but you get the point.
Yeah. And I think on the sort of opposite end of a spectrum there, like my relationship with my father is not good. And a lot of it has to do with what I believe is his 9-ness competing with my 9-ness, right? The work that I am doing and the way that the Enneagram has helped me engage this relationship better has done absolutely nothing to fix the relationship. But it has made it easier for me to handle it.
Yeah,
because of emotional regulation and self-introspection and offering grace to the other side and recognizing that like his journey is not my journey and I cannot control his behavior. I can't make him do the things that I want. I can't make him see things differently. That's just not how it works. But I can change how I respond. And I can only do that if I'm engaged in introspection and if I'm offering empathy and if I'm doing all of these things that we're talking about. It helps me be a better person to handle this thing that I can't control in more appropriate ways.
Are you saying our sales pitch can't be Enneagram will fix all your problems and make all of your relationships golden again?
It could be, but it's a lie. It's a lie.
We are just
the FDA has not examined the effects of this.
In November 2024, there's all sorts of people who are apparently billionaires lying consistently to get what they want. So I don't know why that's a problem.
I mean, I think you do know why that's a problem.
I fully, wholeheartedly agree. You can't fix other people. You can only, as it were, do work on yourself. And this isn't on our list. It often is the case that the hardest people in our lives are the ones who actually shape us into better human beings. Mm-hmm. Some of the worst, most narcissistic people in the world have no problems with other human beings because all those human beings have postured themselves to serve the narcissist at the highest levels possible, sure. And so, self-sacrificially. So sometimes it can be a great good to have some clowns in your life that you have to actually, you actually have to grow to love them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's number 6. I think the more that you get into Enneagram, what you should experience is a deeper connection to your inner life. And this is going to be type dependent because each of the types have a different relationship with their inner life. Some types go to their inner life as their default and are hyper aware of their inner life, and some avoid their inner life to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. And so there is something here about using this as a tool that exposes how to engage your inner self in the healthiest possible ways. For some of us, it's gonna mean different things,
right?
And
there's problems on both ends. There are a lot of people. There are specific types that need to do work to be able to spend more time in their inner life, and there are some types who need to do a little bit of work to spend less time in their inner life because there's a whole world surrounding them that they need to stop, introspecting to be able to see.
Yep. We have yet to bring up the word, but for TJ and I, the big word about Enneagram is balance.
Yep.
And that tension to manage is incredibly important for all of us, given our types. Mm-hmm. Both, you have to love yourself in order to love others, but those go hand in hand. I both love myself and I love others. If I'm consistently, doing damage to myself in order to love others, that's not actually love. That's an unhealthy relationship. Right. If I'm consistently take at cost to others, unhealthy relationship. It's that balance comes into play.
Yep.
Boom. 7. This is my favorite on the list. It's, am I letting go of old narratives? You and I tell stories about ourselves.
Yep.
This is actually what Enneagram in part is it's, it's a filter through which I understand myself. I'm watching Survivor with my kid, and I listened to an interview with somebody who got kicked off the island real early, and apparently you go to this place, they can't go home. They got to wait till the whole game is over.
The show is over. Yeah.
So this guy was like the first guy off this time, and he was like kicking himself, and he's by himself in this place, and now he's eating and such. And then the second person comes in, and this person is like in shock that they got kicked off. Sure. And then they start commiserating, they start telling the story. And then the third person comes in. Well, the first two have already told the story.
Right.
But now the third person's in shock and they have to tell the story. And what he noticed was that he was beginning to tell a narrative that he's going to tell for the rest of his life, because at some point in his relationships, he was going to say, oh, I was on Survivor. And somebody's going to say, well, what happened? Well, here's the narrative and the story I tell about myself. And here's the thing. Those stories, that's all of us. We have the narrative of us going through middle school, of going through high school, of that time where she broke up with me in college. And that becomes solidified as our narrative about ourselves. And those old narratives can be incredibly healthy and inspiring and get you some places. They can also be toxic waste dumps that need to be named, that need to be discarded, that need to not be part of our filter for ourselves. And letting go of old narratives, that is something that Enneagram is incredibly helpful at doing.
Yes. Yeah, this is we mentioned before, like the all of these are signs that like self-work is being done. It's not Enneagram specific. And like this one, it's really easy to identify with an old story of yourself. We all know the trope of the high school football quarterback who never moves out of his parents' basement and is delivering pizzas and like is just reliving the glory days, right? If we're not ever letting the old narrative sort of fall away, then we're going to be living in the past always.
Yep.
And that's not a good place to live because it's in the past. Right now is the present, right?
You can see how this would work if you just think through some of the types. Like some people are just going to, by default, go to that place where they're like, look, I need to be perfect in these spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Or they come to the world and they just say, look, I'm just not lovable. Yeah. Or they say, and et cetera, et cetera. Types, naming your type on these fronts and naming the fact that though this is your type and this is your motive, you are not controlled by that.
Right.
My type is commonly called the perfectionist. I do not need to be controlled by my perfectionism.
Right.
That's simply the shape of how I come to the world and a lot of where my motive is at. Mm-hmm. But naming that, confronting that, utilizing tools I have to put that in its healthy, proper spot, that's going to be the work.
Right. Well, and even just a build on that idea of perfectionism for a moment. If somebody had told you, if you would learn the Enneagram when you were in your 20s, early 20s,
yep,
and somebody had said, this is your type, you're a perfectionist, you might have attached yourself to that and said, oh, I am a perfectionist.
Right.
And then now, 20 years later, you might still have that label, but even you, Jeff, do not like the label of perfectionist for type 1s because you are not a perfectionist.
Yeah, this is a place that I've done work, so I don't want don't want to have the label because it's not a perfect label anymore.
But like if we even the good things that we sort of take onto ourselves, these may not be where we land. These may not be who we are in 10 years because life has happened. And if we're holding on to that identity that we bought in the past, then we aren't giving space for who we are now.
Yeah. The image that I have in my mind is of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And each of them have their weapon. They're a type, as it were.
Sure.
I've picked up nunchucks before. I don't know if that's how you say it. Nunchucks.
I think it's an N.
It's a
nunchuck.
It's like one who lives in a convent, nuns.
I think so.
The thing about nunchucks, you could easily hit yourself in the face with those things.
Oh yeah.
So too your Enneagram type. Like you can cut your hand off with that sword. There's all sorts of ways to impale yourself with one of these things. Although the guy with the stick, he probably doesn't have as many problems. Although I bet even with the bow staff, it'll get you.
Yeah.
It's for TJ and I both. We know lots of people who are, in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They've done Enneagram work for a long time. And one of the things is they've become a master of their motive. And are able to tell their motive, this is where you're healthy, this is where you're unhealthy. And when you're unhealthy, you need to that space needs to lack power, energy, and attention. It doesn't mean you're getting rid of your motive. It just means that you know the proper, healthy, balanced places for it.
Yep.
In pairing with that, and we kind of mentioned this before, but specifically to note it, number 8 on our list is practicing self-compassion. We do fall into all old patterns. Nobody is just straight up and to the right. Our lives, our lives meander and move. Meeting yourself with kindness, meeting yourself with a posture of grace and non-judgmentalism. Shifting from a what is wrong with me to a focus on who am I? What are my goals? What can I control? What can I control? How can I learn from this? All of asking yourself really healthy questions. This is something, again, Enneagram does quite well.
Right. Within the same vein of letting go of old narratives, I recently discovered that I am not as well adjusted to my parents' divorce as I thought I was. Like they divorced when I was 7. That was a very long time ago. Everyone knows that it was a good thing. It has affected my life naturally because, that's the divorce does that. But for the most part, I'm pretty well adjusted to like it's I'm glad my parents separated. I'm like all of the things. It was never my fault. I didn't have to deal with that.
I mean, that's what you've been telling yourself, at least.
Exactly. Like this is something that I have actually very recently started to understand, is that I am not nearly as well adjusted to that as I think I am.
Right.
And I immediately had two responses. One of them was, well, okay, this changes every like does this like revert me back to the past? Blah blah. The other response was, how dare I like live in the world as though this was fine, and now like as a coach, as a wise person that people seek for counsel, like all of those things, I have missed this huge part of my own inner life that I have not fully dealt with yet. And part of that is self-condemnation. Part of that is me blaming myself for not getting over it faster, right? And there's no good that will come from that posture. And part of Enneagram work is recognizing that, like, when I was 7, I had to put a bunch of this stuff in a box so that I could keep living.
Yeah, right.
And now that I'm almost 40, the box is falling apart and the stuff is spilling out. And I have to deal with it now.
Yeah. You're exposing something that's real difficult for me to internalize is that we don't actually ever arrive. We're always in process.
Yep.
And sometimes the in processedness comes out in the fact that our psychology represses certain things.
Right.
And until we can open that box and actually do business with it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, as was said, it might be a survival mechanism, and that can look like all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
Giving yourself grace with the process, self-compassion, and even embracing it. There is something to, a lot of healthy practices, whether they be like certain sorts of exercise or again, certain sorts of dieting. In order to succeed, you have to almost invite the uncomfortable side of that.
Right.
Like in weightlifting, you are intentionally trying to damage your muscles. That's the goal, is doing damage to your muscles so that they break down and then build back in a stronger way, a larger way, or a stronger way. And that's how that works. Dieting, obviously, you are seeking to do exactly what nature says you shouldn't do, which is deprive yourself of resources.
Right.
But it's actually healthier for you. It's healthier for your heart. It's healthier, for your nervous system, for you to be at a certain weight, for some of us who need to diet. So to this, in process.
Yep. Self-compassion.
And self-compassion in the process. Because it is a process. A lot of the folks who really fail, like you see this, this is one of the things I love about sports most, is the psychological elements of sports. The game between your ears is often far more important than the athletic maneuvering, as it were. Like there are all sorts of, like the athletes who are at the top, the pinnacle, all of them physically are probably real similar.
Right.
It is who can win this mentally. And some folks who really take out their anger on themselves will shut down and won't be able, to engage, to perform, to do what needs done in the moment. And there it is.
Yeah.
Self-compassion moves against that.
Self-compassion. Yep.
Number 9. Again, to elevate a TJ phrase, we hit it earlier, but this really works. It's holding everything loosely and holding your identity loosely. Like I would love your insights on this, because you're going to say it better than me. But Enneagram wants to say, here's your type, and give you all of this vocabulary for it. And yet, what does it look like to hold that loosely?
So, just from my own experience, like nines, type 9, I see myself most clearly in type 9, and there's all these things about type 9s that are in the mix, the descriptions, like we're peacemakers, we avoid conflict at all costs, you know, we can be kind of lazy sometimes. We have struggles with like getting up and doing the work that needs to be done. We have it's really easy to narcotize. That's a big description, like that descriptor word that we use when we talk about nines. It's like that we're trying to shut off all of the things that are going to mess up our peace, right? And like there's just all of these descriptions about type 9 that's like this is what a type 9 is. And if I come to the Enneagram and read all of those things and I don't identify with all of them, then I may think, oh, like maybe this one isn't right because I didn't check every single box. But part of holding this loosely is that these are broad brushes. Like these are broad strokes that we're talking about. And our personality, we're going to change over the course of our life. So again, if we are holding on to an old identity, an old narrative, we're not able to adjust to the life that's in front of us. If we're holding on to some type of descriptor of like, this is who I want to be, like, or this is how I'm supposed to think that I am, like all of these things, we need to hold them loosely because some of them might be really good for you and some of them might be completely unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't identify with all things about type 9s. And I know other 9s that like we're completely different people, even though they're still type 9. It's because the motivation is at the core, but all of the other stuff is circumstantial, is situational, is whatever. Like there's just so much about what these types represent that if you cling that tightly to any aspect of this, you're gonna have a hard time.
Yep. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit is that the Enneagram for some can become a excuse for bad behavior.
Yeah.
And that comes out of the stereotype. And for some, when reading about your type, you're going to say, this is my fixed identity, and that is not helpful. What is helpful is having a lens about what your motive is and giving you language for what your motive is.
Yeah.
What is helpful is given that motive, feeling free, FREE, to grow, evolve, become less attached to some of the things you're naturally inclined to grab hold of as hard as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. There is something about transcending a lot of the Enneagram language about your type that is actually some of the healthiest places that you can get to. Yeah. You have to know your type in order to get there. Enneagram type in some ways is kind of like a ladder to climb up so that you don't need it anymore. Yeah. And that's like Uber Ninja Yoda level, but you do need the ladder. And we spend obviously countless hours talking about the ladder, but oftentimes it's so that you can be beyond the ladder, and that's a healthy place to land.
Yep.
Number 10 is a strong sense of purpose and meaning. I think again, Yoda level for Enneagram, what can come into play, it doesn't have to be Yoda level, being able to name what your biggest values are, that these are core to you, and that you have core values, that you have core motives, that you have things like just in you that need to be named, and saying, this is fine. This is who I am. And even this is the best, these are the gifts that I bring to the world most naturally, can be really helpful in aligning those with your own sense of self, with your own sense of purpose and meaning. That can be one of the treasures. One of the sets of podcasts TJ and I did just recently, it's our episode 200, is on the gifts that each of the types bring. And if you bring something unique to the table for others, it can be very helpful for you to actually see meaning, purpose, identity in that because of what you bring to others.
Right. And in this cultural moment where we're really struggling with what it means to have a vocation. And my generation was told you can be anything you want to be, and now nobody really wants to actually work because they like we don't want to do the crappy parts of jobs. And so because we were told you could be anything you want, and so you can, if you want to be a barista that only works 20 hours a week and just live your normal life, you could do that because that's fulfilling. It's not. It's not how it works. But having better perspective on your own inner life has the opportunity to remind you what's good about the things that you are doing, what's good about the spaces in which you live. That, like, as a peacemaker, I know that actually is one of the things that can be really good for managing people, because I care about my staff, my employees a lot. And I care about, I see one of my main roles as an employer is actually to make sure that my employees are in a space where they can do their job. Mm-hmm. Right. And like a big part of that is my 9-ness. Like, I want to make sure that they're all getting along and they have what they need. And there's so much about my type that comes through in a handful of different places where I found myself situated. And learning Enneagram knowledge has also helped me see, oh, this is actually a great place for you because you're the one that's suited for this work.
Yeah. Being able to identify not only here's where I need to improve, but where I already am a rock star.
Yeah.
Incredibly helpful.
Yep.
And it should be empowering and invigorating.
Yep.
Lastly, and I snuck this in as a number 11, that we're replacing bad habits with good habits. We're replacing bad reactions with good reactions. This is the fruit side of this. Right. We all can self-assess. We all can take note of how things have gone. We can all look at the tape, as it were. We can also name, here was something that I identified through the Enneagram that probably isn't a healthy way to be in the world and a healthy way for me to be my best self. I need to name it and discard it. Anytime you discard a bad habit, you must replace it with a good habit. Otherwise, the bad habit will come in and fill up that space. It's just as a law of nature. So what Enneagram can do is say, not only here's your bad habit, but here are some of the things you ought to consider, replacing it with. So an easy one for a type like mine, which is a reactive type. Reactive types have a hard time getting their heads around things. 1s, 2s, and 6s. We have a hard time getting our heads around things sometimes. A bad habit I have is consistently, this can be helpful, but oftentimes it's not. I can verbally process with others in ways that isn't honoring to them. It's not honoring to myself, and it creates relational tension. That's a bad habit. A better habit would be if I had spent the time to journal through my problems, to pray through my problems, to think of ways that I can engage my problems, on paper, that do the business of hard thinking prior to the conversation. Mm-hmm. Bad habit, just letting my anxiety, my wanting this problem to go away, result in this spinning of verbalizing the process. Mm-hmm. Good habit. Look, I need to really name, here are the things that I'm wrestling with, thinking through, and I need to put those on paper. And that comes entirely for me out of Enneagram, understanding that that's how that works. Yeah. And so too, all of us have places where we struggle and can name the bad habit and say, well, what would be the proper replacement given who I am?
Yeah, there's a show called The Good Place, which is amazing, and I highly recommend. And there's this there's this bit in there where she's standing in line for frozen yogurt in the place that she thinks is, spoiler alert, she thinks it's heaven, but it's actually hell.
What?
And So she's standing in line, and she can't make up her mind because there's a million different yogurt flavors, including full battery. It gives you the experience you have when your cell phone is at full charge, right? So the joke is that she can't decide, and so she just stands aside and lets the next person go. And then she runs all the way back home to her philosophy professor boyfriend, kind of
it's a good choice,
teacher guy who's trying to help her become a better person. And she's like really excited that she did something different than she always does. And it was a surprise to her, because what she usually does is stand there and make everyone wait, and maybe even take a little bit extra time and make them feel bad for trying to pressure her. And as she's learning to become a better person, her habit automatically changed because she's becoming a better person, and she was surprised by it.
Right.
That is a thing that is also a really great sign that, like, your habits are changing because you're doing the inner work.
Yeah. I don't want to push it too far, because obviously everything in moderation and balance. But to quote specifically the person who said everything in moderation is Aristotle. And Aristotle, when talking about the happy life, put all his chips here. Very extreme move for somebody who thinks everything in moderation. But Aristotle says it's all about good habits. Like, this is what the good life is. The happy life is. It's showcased in your habits. And again, Enneagram isn't everything, but it sure does a lot of work on these fronts. And some of these fronts are the most meaningful fronts that any of us really experience, because they overlap with our work life, our romantic life, the life of us as children, as parents, as citizens, as individuals who are in relationship with ourselves and with our maker. These are all incredibly important elements to ourselves. And so this is how you know that you're progressing. This is how you know you're on the map. You know, in weightlifting, if you feel sore, probably a good thing. You're doing some work. If you're dieting, you know, you might be checking your waistline. These are the signs. These are the signs that you're getting somewhere on the map of the Enneagram. So real helpful for me, just looking at the list. And it's kind of a reminder. Some of us, like, just, you know, if you have permission to pat yourself on the back if a lot of these connected with you here.
Seriously. It's a big deal.
We mentioned a handful of big concepts like holy ideas and the rest. The place that they are again at the Start Here podcast. At the Start Here podcast, there is a series called Basics. There's only 21 episodes there. Find basics, find your number. We spend a lot of time on the holy ideas and the virtues there. It's near the end of the podcast. Those are well worth listening to anyway for you and your type, but that would be a place where you can kind of see some of the ins and outs of what's going on with your type, and just all of the, like, some of the bigger ideas that TJ and I see. And so that's what I got. You got anything else here, boss?
If you've listened this far, this is something that doesn't need to be said, but, like, if you're coming to the Enneagram for work, these things will help you see it, and you'll get work done. If you're coming to the Enneagram for a party trick, you know, none of these things will happen, and you'll just be that guy at the party that knows the Enneagram.
And good news, you'll forget it in a month, and so
that's probably
you don't have to worry about it.
Luckily, we think the trendiness is sort of on its way out, so
no profit for us. Friends, it would mean the world to us if you shared this with somebody, especially somebody. Again, we wanted to say that one of the best things you can do is talk about the Enneagram with somebody that you love. These are the sorts of episodes to share with people that you love that are just getting into the Enneagram, are kind of at a similar level to yours. And you can just say, here's where I'm at. Here's, you know, what stood out to you in this material. Those are great ways just to dialogue about yourself and get into these sorts of things. We have all sorts of material on patreon.com. Just find Around the Circle. All of our best material is starting to land there, especially for those of you who are new. We're going to be putting up all sorts of videos and content, and our writings are all going to be there, tools for you to advance. We also have a thriving YouTube channel. At this moment in time, we have at least 80 subscribers.
Oh, hey. Nice.
So it is slowly building after 1 month of investment. And obviously one of the just topically jump into the Around the Circle podcast, find some of the topics, look through our catalog and find a topic that pops for you.